By the way, this phrase, fully functioning person, comes out of one of Roger's papers that he brought back to us from a vacation in 1953. He had gone away for the winter, and he didn't just lie around on the sand. He did some of that, but he always, his mind kept working, and he wrote this paper, The Concept of the Fully Functioning Person. And it blew my mind. He's written about 300 papers, and that's my favorite paper, The Concept of the Fully Functioning Person. It tells us something about what we hope, what we expect a human being can be and a human being can become. So in 1959, I tried to formulate my own thinking about that, so I wrote a paper called Toward a Concept of Personality Integration. And I used the notion of organic order. I changed it a little bit, and I changed the phrase, not in any way fundamentally, but I went to this phrase, slightly different, and I've stayed with this ever since. Organismic integration, and I mean the same thing. I'm talking about all of us, the entire, our human system. And I didn't use that phrase, human system, but that obviously is what I was talking about. I didn't catch on to that for a few years, but ultimately I realized, say, I'm talking about the human system, and I can actually describe us in human system terms, and maybe that's useful to do. And so I began to consider a way that I could do that, and I sketched then, and I didn't do it in this paper, it came afterwards. I sketched what I saw as a human system model that we could think about, and if we're wanting to think about the fully functioning person, and ultimately how we get there through psychotherapy. But my first task was to try to build a model of a human system model of a fully functioning person. And I want to hand out, some of you have seen this, in fact some of you have heard me before, so some of this is review, I know, for some of you, not all of you. But I'll pass this out, and what this represents is my way of comprehending the human system. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit as soon as you get it. I'll get the surpluses later. Now, one of the big problems with this is it's on a flat sheet of paper, and it's 2 dimensions, but what I'm really doing is describing you and me. So I'd like to infuse this with the 3rd dimension to make this come alive as nearly as I can. So I want to look at it with you a little bit. In fact, I'm not going to settle for 3 dimensions. I'm going to introduce a 4th dimension here, a la Einstein. But I'll tell you what I mean in a minute. But let's look at what we've got here. I say this is the human system model of us, you and me. And if you look, then you'll notice there's a certain order, a certain lawfulness in this description. And I call these behavioral subsystems, starting at the most molecular one. I built it kind of from the bottom up, from molecular to molar, from small to large, from inside to outside. You can look at it a lot of different ways, but it has a certain order, starting with our own biochemical systems, which I wouldn't do without, and neither would you, and the physiological system, that's part of us, the perceptual system, and so on, the cognitive, the interpersonal. Now notice when I describe the interpersonal system, I'm talking about a very complex system in which part of that interpersonal system is person to person, and part of it is larger than person to person. It's person to the world, and so that's part of us. And then I've introduced a time dimension, because this would be pretty static if that's all there was. There's also the time dimension, which is the developmental dimension. And oh yeah, right here I've said developmental processes. So that the developmental dimension is the time-bound dimension, the growth, the development dimension around us as human beings. Now, you might think I'm in love with arrows because I sure put a bunch of them there. Let me ask you to speculate a little about why I put those arrows, what those arrows mean to you. You don't have to read my mind, just read your own and what the arrows mean to you. And I'd like somebody to venture, stick your neck out, and then you don't have to stick your neck out, just say what you think those arrows mean.
It's not static, it's movement.
Okay, that certainly gives a movement. I wish I could do that in neon so it would really show you. It might make you a little dizzy, but what else does it mean to you?
Interconnectedness.
Very much so, yes. That's part of the movement. No single one of these subsystems is independent. And if there are two words today that I want to make sure that I imprint on either your right or left, probably both. So one of them is connectedness. That's one of the only two words, so you're going to get away easy. I'm going to get away easy.